Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Davis, and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture. And yes, I am scandalous like an Ashley. And I do want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by my friends over at Pocket Jack Comics. And they are coming to a local comic shop near you. Technically, this month and next month, they're in comic stores. And if you go to their website right now, pocketjackcomics.com, you can sign up for their email list and get a free preview PDF copy to your email so you can try it before you buy it. But enough about that, because I have with me legendary comic creator Steve Stern and newcomer whose work I love, Bill Mouse. So welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you. It's funny. On the one hand, it's very flattering to be termed legendary. On the other hand, it just reminds you that you're old. But I'm not as old as either Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
Well, legendary just means you're good.
Thank you. I hope. I try. It's a trying situation.
Well, I don't just throw the term legendary out for anybody and everybody. Obviously, I think you have to accomplish something, and I think you have to have wisdom in comics, and I think you need to have done something. And it's also the issue, and feel free to challenge me, is that you also have to be in the industry long enough. You can't just be in the industry for 2 years, and at least the way I feel is be legendary.
I totally agree. Yeah. You got to put in your pilot hours and earn your spot, earn your spots with people. Yeah.
Right. You got to pay your dues, and you have to stick around. You have to have something you've done that has some longevity to it. So couldn't agree more.
That's a good general rule. Yes.
But enough about that, because that'll get us all into trouble, because that'll just start year-long debates.
I don't want to get political or anything, but
no.
Yeah, if that's the thing that gets me canceled, I don't know what to tell everybody. I'm sorry that I called Eastern a legend. I'm sorry.
No.
I will politely walk myself to the corner of the room. But enough about that, because I do want to talk about Zen. And Zen's been around for 30 plus years, and you guys have a Kickstarter going on right now with Zen Bounty Wars. And before we get too much into this, because there's a lot of stuff going on, what is Zen? Because there's people who are hearing about Zen for the first time. There's people who have left Zen and now are coming back into it. And there's people like me who also discovered Zen with your last Kickstarter, because I'm like, oh, what is this book? It looks cool. What the hell's this? And so you have an interesting audience, but I do want to catch everybody up, because there are people who are going to see this and not know what Zen is for the first time. I want the short version, if possible.
The boilerplate.
Okay. All right. So 1987, I'm living in Maine. I'm running an ad agency. I go to a new client, Cody's Old Fashioned Ice Cream, considered the best damned ice cream in New England by no less than Yankee Magazine, the arbiter of all things cool in New England. So the son of the owner is named Dan Cody. And I see his artwork festooned in his mother's office. And I say, I really love that art. She says, that's my son Dan's handiwork. And if you let him be the artist on all of our print advertising, you can have the account. So I'm not stupid. I said, yes, of course. Plus, I loved his work. I met Dan, told him, I'm a comic book guy. He said, I always wanted to work on a comic book. And Zen was born. Who is Zen? He's a blue-skinned alien life form who was created in a test tube. The life form was deemed broken, and the kindly female scientist named Tesla, of all names, was told to dispose of the biomatter, quote unquote. She couldn't do it because he was alive. She puts him in a teapot, like a waste pod, and jettisons him off into space. As fate would have it, the pod travels within the gravitational pull of the mystical planet Om, where it lands, and Zen is brought up by the mystic masters of Om, specifically Master Sattva, who is his mentor. Zen grows to become the greatest martial arts and meditative acolyte of the mystic masters of Om. And when he achieves adulthood, he's given a hypership, a ship that was left on Om years before by another cosmic traveler, and told to go forth and find his destiny. That is the origin of Zen.
I wish I had some music in the background. This would have been nice. little Zimmerman, a little.
Well, that was pretty concise, right? That was pretty concise.
No, that's the thing. I just needed a little bit of movie soundtrack behind it, because like you had the perfect little cadence and everything. Yeah. But yeah, that's Zen. That is Zen. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously, I want to get into the good stuff now, because I want to get into what's going on with this Kickstarter. Obviously, there's a bunch of Zen stories, and I think there was a story before technically this Kickstarter that in the chronological order where there's a bounty story, I guess, or a war story. I'm not exactly sure. I think it was Hard Bounty. I think it might have been, if I'm not mistaken. Again, my Zen history is not all there, guys. So
I'll fill you in, because I'm the person who can fill you in. Okay?
You're the guy.
So a couple of years ago, I got together with another amazing artist who you and some of your audience may have heard of, Marat Michaels. Marat has worked on stuff for Marvel, DC, other places. And Marat and I did a series called Hard Bounty. It was initially published as 6 individual comics by our publisher, which is First Comics, right? Mm-hmm. And the book sold, many of the individual issues sold out. So then First Comics issued a trade paperback, the Hard Bounty trade paperback, the first printing of which sold out really quickly. Then they proceeded to print up a second printing, and guess what? That has sold out. The last time I saw one of those online, it was at Amazon, and whoever was selling it sold it for $150, that one issue, okay, that one trade paperback. What the fine folks at First Comics have just decided to do is, opposed to go immediately into a third printing of the trade paperback, they're going to print up sufficient quantities of all of the individual 6 issues that sold out, and they're going to have them available both online and at comic book conventions. So that's Hard Bounty, and it was a real bounty hunting story, okay, because Zen is now preeminently a bounty hunter. Bounty Wars, which Bill and I are working on, which we'll get into, is the direct sequel to Hard Bounty.
Yeah, so let's get into it, because now you have Zen somewhat established. Obviously, you have Hard Bounty, and then this is, I guess, a Zen story that's kind of dealing with some aspects of that world. And I think it combines your character and then a character Bill developed, Naira X. And hopefully I got her name right. Or is it Nira X? I don't know.
It's exactly. Nira X. There you go.
And so what is this like? Because you obviously have some parameters to play in, but you also have kind of a new world and a very open world as well. There's no real rules, I feel. There's no major rules in this world. And you kind of got all these questions about bounty hunting, what's going to happen, should you bounty hunt, what are the consequences for it? Yep. And you're kind of stepping in mud. It might be a good way how to tell this story. I'm being as clean as I possibly can when I'm describing it.
Yeah. Well, Bill, why don't you talk a little bit about Nira and explain her origin? And at some point, I can chime in and talk a little bit specifically about the content of Bounty Wars.
Sure. Well, back in 93, Nira actually had her very first appearance in comics in Zen Zero from Zen number 0 from Entity Comics. It was actually the very first superhero comic issue that Entity Comics published back in 93. So that's where she actually comes from. We needed a character. We needed a mercenary character to help Zen on this particular adventure that she was in on that issue. And that's where she was created. And luckily, everybody responded to her like super awesome. And, she spun out into her own series, and I've been publishing her ever since. And thanks to Steve and Dan, I was able to introduce a lot of characters into the Zen stories that I was writing for Entity Comics back then. And so that's where all of that kind of comes from. And that's why it's exciting for me right now, because it's like a nice full circle moment where it's like, wow, like we've been doing this for 30 years and we're like really excited about this new story, kind of getting the gang back together again. You know what I mean? And figuratively and literally, it's like bringing the characters back together again for an adventure, but also bringing us back together again as a creative team. Steve writing the story, me providing the art, and it's like it's got this real 90s action superhero sci-fi vibe that we really liked from back then. And the 90s were like magic for us back then. We just had so much fun, dude. Yeah, it was.
Talk about this a little bit, because obviously you created this character in the 90s. Zen was around in the 90s, and then these two characters went off and did their own stuff and have their own adventures and have evolved in their own ways. And then the two of you have also evolved as creators and artists.
Exactly.
Hopefully, people get better. Hopefully.
Right. Let's hope so. Yeah. People were paying me to get better, so it's like I didn't start at the top when I first started. I was a young 20-year-old kid that just loved to draw comic books. So I think I have a nice group of fans that basically were paying me to improve.
So what is that like, though? Because you just said something that you're getting the gang back together, but obviously I think Steve has gotten way better as a writer, just because when you have more wisdom, you know how to tell better stories, and you know how to write better stories, you know how to have further character development. And then you as an artist, I would imagine too, have also figured out new techniques and have honed and developed and further developed your skills. And now you got this 90s vibe, but it's almost like you got to power up, for lack of a better word, when you're bringing it back into that vibe. And what is that like? Because you're telling a 2024 story with a 90s vibe from what I've seen from the art, and the 90s are really hot right now. So it's kind of cool. It's like the skill level is evolved, but we get the vibe we want.
I kind of equate it to if somebody was, it's kind of like when Stranger Things came out. It was a story that was set in the 80s, but it was with today's cinematography, with today's storytelling techniques. You know what I mean? So it was like so cool to watch that, even though, because if it was filmed and written like an 80s series, like I probably wouldn't be interested. Because like we've evolved so much since then. We've learned so much. We've gotten better at our craft. So that's what I'm hoping that this is. People are going to see like a 90s comic, but in IMAX or something. It's like something better. It's something with the techniques and the experience that we have, and we're both a little bit older. We've got a lot of things under our belt. So that's what's happening now. It's almost like going back, not necessarily doing it again, because we're doing something fresh and something new, but being able to do these stories with these characters and actually able to show people it's like, wow, this is like a next level up. But but with characters that we love and that we're really connected to. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, well, what I can say is this. See, I personally, I don't think in terms of comic book eras, okay, 90s, early 2000s, current. I just write the story that I want to write. And what I have going on in this book is as follows. Okay, Zen became officially a bounty hunter in a book that Bill and I did several years ago, called, of all things, Zen Bounty Hunter, which, by the way, is available at First Comics. If somebody wants to go to firstcomics.com and you scoff it up for like $8, they can get it. But here's the thing. So first came Zen Bounty Hunter. Prior to that, Zen was basically like a soldier of fortune or a mercenary, taking on all sorts of diverse tasks. But I got so enamored of the bounty hunting genre part of the reason for that was I read a lot of Westerns, and bounty hunting started in America's Old West, right? And by the way, one of the great bounty hunter Western novels is by none other than Elmore Leonard, who's known for his crime stuff like, Get Shorty. But he wrote a book, a Western called The Bounty Hunters. And anybody who's interested in bounty hunting should read it. But in any event, I got so enamored of bounty hunting that I read every Western bounty hunting book you could find. And and then of course there was this show on TV. Remember Dog the Bounty Hunter?
Yeah.
Which was a modern guy. And then what's very interesting is the immense popularity of like The Mandalorian on Disney Plus and Boba Fett, right? Jango Fett. These guys are all bounty hunters.
Bob E.
And
Feet.
one thing that people need to be aware of is I did not jump on a Mandalorian bounty hunter trend. Zen has been a bounty hunter for like well over a decade. And so what I have in this current book, and again, this is why I think it transcends like 90s or 2000s. I just wanted to write the best sci-fi based bounty hunting story I could possibly write. And that's what's in this book. All right. And I'll tell you a little bit about it because I know Andrew wants to know. Okay. What happens essentially in this book is Zen has an encounter at the very beginning of the story with a character who's known as a bounty killer. Bounty killers are a real fact in the world of bounty hunting. And who are they? They're guys that kill their bounties regardless of whether it says dead or alive. They always bring them in dead. And the way they get away with it is they always claim when they haul in the dead carcass, they always claim that their bounty tried to kill them, tried to escape, tried to kill them, and they had to kill in self-defense. So they're very cruel, mean dudes who will kill every time. This incident that Zen has with a bounty killer makes him, for the first time, question his profession. So what does he do? He goes to his mentor, who he is in mental contact with at all times, Master Sattva, and tells Sattva how he's feeling, right? Sattva has a suggestion for him. He says, Zen, you're such a loner. Before you decide if you want to get out of the profession, hang out with some fellow bounty hunters. Zen proceeds to do that in what's called a bounty hunting lodge, okay? And during the course of this, we meet many other bounty hunters, okay? And Nira X, who's also basically a bounty hunter or a part-time bounty hunter, she shows up. And the two of them get involved in a massive bounty hunt that's instigated by two warring space lords, okay? So that's all I'm going to say. I think I said more than enough. And this is what happens in this story. And by the end of the story, we've met a lot of bounty hunters. We've had a lot of examination of the bounty hunting profession. And I'll leave it up to you to decide what Zen decides to do at the end of the story.
There you go. There's a couple of bounty hunter guys right there. I'll give you a preview. I'll give you a sneak peek.
Look at that amazing art.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's so cool. I'm so jealous I can't draw. I'm just so jealous in my life. It's not my skill.
Me too. When I started out, Andrew, I wanted to write and draw. And I wrote and drew some stories. The writing was passable, I guess. The art was horrific. So I said, well, God, I really got to concentrate on learning how to write. And that's what I did over the ensuing decades.
There's always a give and take because I'm not qualified to do very much else. So I'm glad that you like the artwork.
Oh, it's amazing.
Awesome. But yeah, I'll stick some of it up here so that way little preview while we're talking. I already have my camera pointed down at my desk because I've been doing a lot of draw streams lately.
Yeah.
So I don't want to poke too hard, but what is this like too? Because obviously bounty hunting and bounty hunting stories and bounty hunter stories and I guess mercenary stories are really popular right now.
Yeah.
And I think they're very relatable.
I think they've always had that that thing to it. I mean, even when I was a kid and Boba Fett first came out, like for the first time, like in theaters, and he didn't really even do all that much. I thought he was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. You know, it's like
Yeah.
just him nodding and having all the cool equipment. I was just like, as a little kid, you're already imagining all the cool adventures that he's probably been on with all the like the cool spaceships and the cool, going up against his prey, as it were, trying to catch people. And so, yeah, I mean, it's always that I think it's always had that cool factor.
Well, I'm old enough to have watched Wanted Dead or Alive, which was a black and white TV show starring Steve McQueen. That's how he got his start in the biz.
There you go. There you go. I think Steve McQueen. I'm thinking like Papillon. Let's escape from the island.
Or Bullet, right? Yeah.
I think a Bullet. Yeah. I don't know why Papillon hit me first. I think, but I mean, I was pretty small when those movies came out. I mean, so I think they hit me because I was small and impressionable. It's like, dude, they made a raft out of coconuts. How is that possible?
So to even go further too, I mean, there is real decisions in this book also. And that's the other thing too that I think is interesting is that I don't know how many comics the two of you read that aren't from First or elsewhere, or even on the indie scene, but there's so many books as a reader now that I'm like, there's no real consequence for what's going on. Or it takes a while to get consequences. And it kills.
That's the part that gets me about this particular story that Steve wrote is we're dealing with Zen kind of wrestling with the idea of, like he's doing the bounty hunting, but now he's actually wrestling with the morality of it. He's wrestling with whether or not he should continue doing it. Is he bringing something good to the table or good to the universe? Him continuing to do that particular profession. Should he do something else? So I think him wrestling with that is like, that's a cool angle to throw into what could just very well be, and I would completely enjoy it if it was just a straightforward action story where we just have two characters running after their prey, catching them and bringing them back. So it's got a lot of cool angles to it that way.
Yeah.
A lot of relatable.
Let me ask this because I don't know anymore if you could have a straight action story in comics because for the longest time, at least for me, maybe I've evolved as a reader and maybe I'm a unique breed here, but I need more of some psychological analysis, more of that stuff in there now, because I need something that has a little bit of a higher intellect than just blowing up starship after starship after starship.
Right.
But like, I like the fact that he's struggling with being a bounty hunter. I also like the fact that he is, to some degree, being a pawn moved on a chessboard. And what is he going to do? Because if two warlords are playing chess with each other using bounty hunters, now you have a whole nother level of psychological playment in there and placement in there. And it's also, I'm pretty sure Zen is not too thrilled that he's being used as a pawn. And I'm sure he's going to want to do something about it.
Exactly.
Or he can use it to benefit.
Yeah. This is not the first time Zen was used as a pawn. Very early in Zen's history, when he came to Earth to battle for Earth's environment, he was completely a pawn at the hands of these omniscient savants known as the Gordons. Okay, and that's a whole other part of Zen. Early in Zen's career, he was environmentally themed, right? And full transparency, part of the reason for that was as Zen grew in popularity, he was picked up by the Nintendo company, Konami. And I think that there were two highly successful Zen video games. One was an NES and one was a Game Boy handheld, right? And then there was an accompanying line of action figures from the Just Toys company. Now, the reason all that happened was something called licensing. Okay. And we were approached through a major licensing agent who basically told us that these companies were looking for environmentally themed properties because and the environment in the early 90s was the hottest thing. Okay. And so Dan and I rose to the occasion and we created a complete environmentally themed story with good guys and bad guys. Okay. And these characters are in both video games, in the line of action figures, and in the Archie comics. That was also a licensing deal. And and over the years, some people said to me, well, Steve, you just did that to make money. Well, in this world, first of all, if you don't make money, you're not going to survive too well, right? And I was always up for a creative challenge, right? So people love this stuff. I'll give you an example. Recently, one copy of the NES game on eBay sold for $4,500. So there's the money factor.
Isn't that crazy?
Money, but Andrew, you're an investor, so you know that money has to do with value, right? So clearly, the fact that so we did that, and so for the first several years of his existence, Zen was an environmentally themed story. But when that played out, that's when Zen became basically a mercenary and a soldier of fortune. And that went on for a good few years. And when that played out, we did what I always wanted to do with Zen and made him a bounty hunter. So there you go.
I don't have any problem with that because I was speaking to somebody and people, say, oh, you just took a cash grab. Well, I don't know if that's really fair anymore in comics or in society where, that's capitalism. If something is hot, you have to take things when they're hot and you have to go with the flow. And I'm not saying you have to always go with the flow, but it's very hard to go against the grain. It's very, very hard to do so. And you have to do what's right for your property. And sometimes what's doing right for your property is, if environmentalism is the hottest thing in the 90s, and that's going to allow you to go for another 10 years with your project, and I forget, Bradley Cooper's a good example of this. I'm sure he did movies when he was coming up that weren't his dream movie. But then he got to do a movie like Maestro, which he wanted to do. Right. Or Ben Affleck then did Argo. That movie took, I think, 8 to 9 years to even get greenlit, up pitching over and over and over again.
Yeah,
and
right.
That movie was a passion movie versus doing something like, actually, Good Will Hunting was a passion movie too, but that's not the point here.
Right. You know what?
It's a really bad example. But
I don't know, if Pepsi came up to me and said, I want to put, I want Nira X to be drinking cans of Pepsi in her stories. I don't see that as necessarily selling out because I drink Pepsi. I think selling out means you're taking cash for something that you really don't want to do or it goes against your values.
Right.
If you're doing something that doesn't represent you, doesn't represent the character, and you're kind of doing it almost against your own will, then that's selling out.
Well,
I didn't take a sponsor with somebody because I didn't like their product. And I thought their product was actually more harmful to comics than was going to be beneficial. And I thought it would hurt my brand. And they were willing to pay me about $1,000. And so I chose not to go with them because I felt that I would be selling out. And I felt that I would be causing more harm.
Well, you know what? In that situation, you would have been. So you stuck to your guns and your integrity, and you said no, which is awesome. I'm glad you did that because it went against what you believe. You know what I mean?
Well, I got to give you a couple of examples of that. First of all, if Dan and I had not decided to go into the environmental scenario, I'm positive we would not be sitting here talking to you today. Okay. That's number one. Number two is, we do live in a capitalistic society. You got to do things that you believe in.
Sure, sure.
But I'll tell you something we didn't do. Okay, you'll find this interesting. Marvel Comics offered us $25,000 back in the day to buy Zen out. We said no because we had discussions with them. What when they would scoff up properties back in that time period, they would take some of their lower level talent, let's say, not the big name guys that are working on X-Men and Spider-Man. They take a couple of people and they would, a writer and an artist, and they'd put them on a book. That is what would have happened with Zen. And of course, I would have lost all creative control.
Right.
So no amount of money, 25,000.
Personally, I'm super happy. I'm super happy that you guys when we started publishing with Entity Comics, I was right after the Archie run, right after the video games. And I'm super glad that you guys did do all the environmental stories, because first of all, they're positive stories. They're stories you expose Zen to a whole audience of like a younger audience that would grow later on to be adult collectors that would later be people that
in there too. Sorry to interrupt. You expose Zen to a bunch of parents too, because
exactly.
that sometimes the audience isn't just the children; it's the parents. And this is something that I think is very complicated when you're dealing with comics, especially when you're buying a comic for a 7-year-old at the supermarket.
Right.
The mother is just as important as the person she's buying it for.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Zen is now truly a multi-generational property. Many, many parents come to us, at our booths at the various conventions with their kids. And they're introducing their kids to Zen. And something else I'm going to mention is I've always kept Zen kind of, I'll call it all ages, by which I mean to say, you're not going to find curse words, and you're not going to find nudity and heavy-duty sexuality in Zen. I never wanted.
This isn't sexual, Steve? Really? You're telling me this isn't sexual? Look at this.
That's great, huh?
He's a general audience character. I mean, he's our Marvel, DC wouldn't go but so far with their title, with their flagship characters, their Batmans, their Spider-Mans. There's a limit because you want to keep that wide audience, and there's a time and a place for other characters and other stories to tell those types of stories, which is great.
You want to tell the people about that book you just held up there?
Which book? Who? Oh, okay.
This one, right?
Yeah.
That one. Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little?
Oh, I mean, this thing was great. You guys should just watch the interview instead.
That's right, because because you interviewed L'Amour Supreme and I about that Kickstarter book.
Oh yeah. I backed it. It's an awesome book. I mean, I didn't even read it yet, but the story is great, and it's L'Amour Supreme's, one of his first comic works, if not his first comic work, and it's a fantastic thing. The art is just beautiful in this book, and the Kickstarter was fantastic. I mean, there was everything on that Kickstarter, and the cards were amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that was Zen's first Kickstarter campaign in 36 years. And now
that's the very first one. Yep.
Yeah, and now the second one in our 37th year, which we've now crossed into, is Bounty Wars.
So let's actually talk about that too, because I don't know if Bill, how I think you've done a few Kickstarters or been involved in a bunch, right?
Yeah, I've been involved in a few, and I've actually thrown a couple myself. Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason why I asked that is because Kickstarter has changed the game in a lot of ways, and it allows, I think, for projects that normally wouldn't get a spotlight to get a spotlight, and it also allows for projects that are more niche or needing a revitalization or a little bit of a booster before they do the next thing, maybe in a main market or with a publisher, or get distributed sort of in a more mainstream secondary position. The ability to connect with what I like to call true believer fans.
Right.
There's somebody who is that fan who says, I want a sketch, or I want something that is exclusive to a campaign, or that I want to support a creator directly, Kickstarter allows for that. And I feel like 2023, 2024, 2022, was kind of the next stage for Kickstarter, where a lot of these projects came out, and it makes this stuff actually independent. Where I think for the first time in a very long time, independent comics or indie comics are sort of independent actually, and they're not so
Right.
tied anymore to massive, I guess, corporate money. I don't know if that makes
Right.
any sense.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. It's in fact, if it wasn't for Kickstarter and a little bit later, I'll learn how to use Indiegogo as well. But right now I just know how to use Kickstarter. And if it wasn't for Kickstarter, I wouldn't be able to connect with the fan base that I've had all these years with some projects that I want to do. And the fans actually make those projects possible directly.
Yeah, I
And
feel. Yeah,
yeah.
I feel that the internet and Kickstarter or crowdfunding has created a paradigm shift in the entire business.
Oh yeah, there's
Back-
access in a
right?
way that was never possible before. It's like without going through a catalog and without going through, A to B to C to D, you're actually going straight to the consumer, straight to the
Right.
collector. And these are for projects that probably wouldn't be greenlit to go into shops in the first place because of, just the financial infrastructure that needs to be in place to make those kind of projects happen, to make it profitable for
Right.
everybody involved. So for projects that I've been doing Kickstarters on my own with, especially, it's been a game changer, and it allowed me to create some projects that would have not otherwise been possible. And I noticed that a lot of the collectors, a lot of what I'm bringing in is for my own personal Kickstarters. There's lots of I have some tiers that have sketches, that have original art, that have different things like that. They're definitely supporting the individual artist in cases like that, and making that actually possible in the first place. Yeah, totally agree.
Right.
I mean, I ran a Kickstarter for this show, and I did fund, and definitely it's interesting, and I'm not opposed to running another one.
Mhm.
I think that Kickstarter and crowdfunding, I think it is a fascinating, fascinating industry, and I also think that it's hitting the collector's niche, at least the way I feel, because when I go on to Kickstarter, and
Yeah.
I don't know, I know that I'm going to show some covers, but I don't know how exclusive those covers are for this Kickstarter. But when there are exclusive covers to a Kickstarter, that makes me want to buy more of that as a collector,
Mhm.
and also as a reseller on an eBay or on a whatnot. Or
Yeah.
I'm not also opposed to picking up some cool stuff off a Kickstarter. Then somebody 6 months is like, oh man, I really want that book. And, it's become very interesting for me on a business level. And I just
Mhm.
think it's fascinating. So that's how I feel, is that I'm obviously personal interested, and on a business wise, I mean, I love retail
Yeah.
packages.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. The covers and everything that are they should be exclusive to the Kickstarter campaign, because it's an event situation where everybody pitches in and makes it happen. If
Right.
there's a direct market, or if there's another version of the book that goes to stores later on, then hopefully there's a repackaging that happens, and there's a cover that is specifically for that product when it does
Right.
come out. So that way the Kickstarter item that the fans actually made happen stands out, and it's unique to itself. I like to make sure that
Right.
the book
Well,
were
that whole thing is still evolving as to what happens after the Kickstarter. For example, the Berserker, I think it's called, the one that Keanu Reeves is involved with, right?
Mhm.
If you go in a comic book store, now that was a Kickstarter, right? But if you go in a comic book store, you'll find all of those books. I don't honestly know if they have different covers or whatever. But for example, so many people have written to me and to First Comics, can I still get my hands on that L'Amour Supreme book? And that's going to be a decision for First Comics as to how they deal with that.
Oh,
Because
sure,
I don't
sure.
know. I don't
I mean,
know.
I'll tell you how I feel. I don't really care so much about a graphic novel, where this to me is not a single comic issue. This is a bound graphic novel book. So to
Okay.
me, I like exclusive graphic novels. I could care one way or the other. If it's an exclusive Kickstarter, then I'm like, it should remain on the Kickstarter. But if this was the only one offered and then first did that, I wouldn't be insulted by
Right.
that.
Right.
But I'll
Okay.
give you an
Yeah.
example of a book that I would be. Let's say that this is one of the covers. It's a blank sketch.
Mhm.
If the blank sketch was exclusive to the Kickstarter and then all of a sudden First was selling those on their website for the
No.
same price that I backed, I'd be pissed off
Right.
because like, wait a second. And look, I've been in situations where that's happened. And I'm like, why did I support you, the artist, when you in 6 months from now are going to be, it's going to be on your website? Like, how does that make me feel good? It's an ethical question. If anything, it's not even a legal issue per se. And I'm not
Right. Because, well, for a lot of products, like the Kickstarter is what made it possible to exist in the first place in order to create the product. So they're probably going to overprint a certain amount. Like certain companies may want to overprint a certain amount to be able to sell later. So you'll see it on their websites later on. But without the ability to have the Kickstarter in the first place, that's what the fan made possible.
Right.
And that's the reason Kickstarter exists, is because if you're a huge company that just, you're flush with cash and you can just print all of your product without, your customer base actually giving you the money to make that stuff and have it in stock, then maybe that company doesn't need to be on Kickstarter because they've already got all the cash they need to make the product and have it in stock, awaiting sale. But when you have a company on any level, like a medium-sized company, a small company, and an individual like myself, I can't afford to just go out and print 50,000 copies of a thing and have it as stock in my little warehouse unless the Kickstarter actually made it possible. So the fans backing the Kickstarter is what actually made all of that possible to have that stock in the first place.
Right. Right. It's a true grassroots phenomenon.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about it, because we're going direct to the fans.
Now, I would definitely be angry if somebody said on a Kickstarter, hey, we're making this particular cover. It's going to be limited to this certain amount of copies, specifically from the Kickstarter. Like, let's say there's only 1,000 of this particular cover, but then you go around and you start printing more of it later on. Then, yeah, I would totally be angry about that because that took away the limited nature of that cover, right? You're kind of going behind everybody's back.
Right. And I know First Comics would never.
Oh, no, that's bad taste. You would never do something like that. But that's definitely something that if it did happen, like some smaller company or, other individuals like myself, they see that they could sell some more. Yeah. So that would make me angry for sure. So that's something I would stay away from.
My position is that, if I know certain people on Kickstarter say, look, covers C and D are exclusive to the Kickstarters, but A and B, I'm going to print as many as I want, but they're upfront about it. And I get really pissed off. And I understand that people might print another 20 of cover C and D. And if you only have 20 left on your website, I get it. And I'm willing to surrender. But when you have 200 of C and D and you overprinted by 200, but you only had, 50 people back in cover C, I'm like, you're stretching $1. It's like,
right. But I'll tell you, the covers, whatever gets printed up from the campaign, those specific covers, that should be it from those campaigns. They might overprint a little bit to have in stock, and that's it. But it's only from the Kickstarter. And if you do another printing of that book and you put it for sale on your website or take it to stores or something like that, it should have a completely different cover. That way it differentiates it from that original print run that you did for the Kickstarter. So that way it's a different product. It's a different print run altogether.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I think Kickstarter is interesting. And I also think it's fascinating because, again, we go back to the fact that you have a product that's been around for 36, 37 years, and now it's on Kickstarter and it's doing well. I mean, I think the first one did close to 15. This one is close to 5, and I think you guys will break at least 8 or 9 conservatively. Conservatively, I think you will.
We have 26 days to go, which is only 4 days less than a month. So yeah, I think it will exceed.
I always my not to get too political, but the best saying ever is under promise, over deliver. Always under promise, over deliver. Because if you over promise and you under deliver, you're going to get kicked out of office.
Absolutely.
and so if you always under promise and then you over deliver, you're getting reelected every single time.
Exactly.
But that's why I say I think you'll do 8 to 9 very conservatively. Hopefully you'll do more, and I think you'll break beyond 10. I really do, because you got a lot of time. Obviously, it's gaining traction, but I do think it's fascinating because you can do whatever you want with this book, and you have no, overlord per se, no pun intended. I'm telling you how to run it. So that's how I feel about your book. Right?
And what's really cool.
No, I appreciate it, dude. I do. Yeah.
And what else is cool? Because we're issuing this as individual books, we're going to be running 4 Kickstarters. Each one is a 25-page book. So when the whole story arc is completed, it's like a 100-page story that undoubtedly at some juncture after that will be collected into a graphic novel.
So let me ask this too, because I'm curious, because also obviously you do issue 1, and then you're probably going to offer some version of issue 1 when you do issue 2,
right?
And you're going to offer some issue of issues 1 and 2 when you do 3, and then you're going to offer the whole thing when you do 4. And so what is that like too? Because that's also an advantage when you actually have a battle plan. Because I think part of the problem with indie comics is that some people say, look, I got an idea to do a 10 issue story arc, but are you going to make it to 10? Like, because
right.
Yeah. Well, Bill has already done that successfully with Nira.
Oh yeah, we do 3-issue arcs through Committed Comics, and then also on my own. I'm doing the Kickstarters that I've done on my own have done well. And so between my stuff and between the stuff we've done with Committed, I think the end of the campaigns usually end up somewhere between 12. I think the most we ever did was like 21,000. So we're growing and learning and listening to the fans and listening to everyone to make sure that we're doing the best we can with everything.
With each succeeding campaign,
we're
doing our job right, we're creating more and more awareness. And then as each, you said so cogently, when we do for number 2, we'll also offer 1. And when we do 3, we'll offer, et cetera, et cetera. And that does give you the potential to increase your sales volume. Sure.
No, I think it's interesting. And obviously I'm excited because I like that Lamar Supreme book. I'm very excited to read it. Obviously, I do not know everything about Zen. I'm jumping into this, and I'm very excited. I'm excited for the cover I bought, because I definitely want to read this story more so than I want to collect it, which is a rare thing, because I'm a big comic collector, and I don't read a lot of what I collect, which is really bad. That's a really bad thing to say. I like looking at
don't feel bad about that. I actually, when I buy books, I typically don't read them right off the bat myself. It's like I typically look at the art, I flip through the book, So it might be a month or 2 before I actually sit down and actually read the book.
I have a question for Andrew, if I might turn it around and ask you a question, sir.
Go right ahead.
Do you have quite a comic book collection?
I do. I'm sitting on a lot of books, a lot.
Could you mention like a key book you might have? I'm just curious.
WWE number 7, signed by Charlotte Flair, Bayley, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and the Bella Twins, graded 9.8 at San Diego Comic-Con.
Wow. Can I show you something?
Go right ahead.
Step away for one quick second.
Just for those who don't know the book, it is probably one of the WWE comic books out there right now. And there's only 3 graded, and it is, and I bought it way below market value, below.
That's a good find. You got some bragging rights on that one.
I have something interesting to share with you. You'll get a kick out of this. I'm going to display a book to you. Okay. See this book?
I know that book.
Now, this book is issue number 6A of a Zen Intergalactic Ninja series, right? This cover is by L'Amour Supreme, and it represents the first piece ever of his published comic book art. The interior is not by him, but this cover is. Now, this book is impossible to find on the internet. Okay. You can go to every website that sells comics, eBay, everywhere. Cannot find this book. This has become the rarest issue of Zen, rarer still than the #1 issue that Dan Cody and I did in 1987. So I have a few copies of it, and at some juncture, well, I did sell one to a fellow who runs a vintage comic book store in Huntington Beach, California, called McFly's Comics, right? I won't disclose what I sold it to him for. But the thing is that this is the book that people write to me about all the time. Everyone's trying to find this book. It's just it sold out when it was issued, okay? And everyone who's got it has held on to it, and no one has put it up for sale. So keep your eyes on this one, Andrew, as an investor.
Yeah, I threw up a couple of pieces of art from the campaign. So
Yeah.
that's the book. That's the book I'm pushing right now. Is a campaign book, not this other sold out book you can't find nowhere.
That's right. Well, this book will become.
This piece on the left is it's a sketch from my daughter, Cat Mouse. She's actually been in the industry now for like 11 years.
Yeah.
She's got one of our variant covers. She's one of our variant cover artists, featured artists.
So I think she did this one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, is that
it? Yeah.
How amazing, how iconic and amazing is that piece of art?
If you jump over to after the show and stuff, you jump over to my YouTube channel at Bill Mouse Art, just one word. The little video that I've got up, it serves a little time lapse of her working on that piece. I think it came out so cool. But we have an original art pack as one of the tiers on the campaign. So if you get the little art pack, you get a sketch from Kat and you get a sketch from myself. And then 1 out of every 10 sketches will be a sketch of Nira X, and then her sketches kind of end up looking like this here.
Nice.
So I just wanted to give you a peek at what some of the stuff is looking like from the campaign. I think it's super exciting that she's a part of it, and she's actually doing.
I think Kat, it represents the next generation of Zen artists. We've had
she's the upgrade, man. She's the upgrade. She's a 2.0.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And then there's a few other covers. There's this one right here, which is the wraparound.
There's the wraparound.
There you go. That's the wraparound.
This is cover A.
Yes.
Yep.
So I like this cover a lot. I like this cover a lot.
I appreciate it.
But
I made sure Nira X had a costume that was unique to the series. So I kind of like modified her costume a bit, so that way she's dressed for work.
Oh yeah. And do you have access to show? There it is. Look at that. Thad Rhodes. Tell us about that.
I was getting there. You have to trust the system, Steve.
Trust the system. Yeah, this is a great piece. And I have to tell everybody, just because it's the digital nature of this piece, it's not AI artwork. Thad actually doesn't do AI artwork for us. Didn't use any AI for this. He's been doing digital art like this for the last 25, 26 years. And he's done some other artwork for us for Zen. Some of it ended up on the back cover of Heavy Metal.
Yeah. Did you know that, Andrew? Yeah.
We've had some posters. We've had some other variant covers that he's done for us over the years. It's super happy that we're able to get him on board for the project.
A good few years back, Thad, who I've known for several years and Bill's known forever, Thad did a piece of Zen art with Zen and this really cool looking space babe, right? It was so amazing. I sent it to Heavy Metal magazine and they published it on the back cover. So Zen has been on the back cover of Heavy Metal, courtesy of Thad Rhodes. So great piece of work there.
Yeah.
And then obviously this is the last cover on a show, which is the blank sketch. So if you want to get something done by anybody or your favorite artist relating to Zen, or you just want the option to do it, there's blank covers that you can get as well in there. And so that's that. And then obviously there's a bunch of other stuff. There's obviously, you mentioned the art packs. I think there's metal prints. I think there's some other stuff in there as well that you could potentially.
There's some the one thing that we have on the campaign that's like a signature item is we have something called, it's just a mini print pack, and it's a print from each individual artist. So there's the one by Cat Mouse, there's one by me, and then there's one by Thad Rhodes. Each one of those will be signed by the artist that did that piece, and then all of those will be signed by Steve, who of course wrote the story and is co-creator and all that good stuff. So that way you get a full nice little signature piece thing. And then we also have a metal print set. You can order any of the tiers that you select. You can mix and match, and you can add anything on in the add-on store. So you don't have to get like the metal print pack. You can get all three of them together as one pack. But you can also just order just the individual print, metal print that you want.
Metal. This was the metal art print of that aforementioned cover, but this is the size, and this is the metallic nature of the same prints we're going to do for Bounty Wars.
And the finish, very cool. I love these. The finish on the front is so nice and clear. Sometimes with the metal prints, like the metal shows through in a way that you kind of can't see the artwork as clearly as you'd like to. And these prints really came out nice, really smooth, real clear.
No, I agree, but obviously I know Steve has a heart out in 5 minutes. Right. I do want to give Steve and Bill both opportunity to promote themselves, promote the campaign, where people can find them, bother them, hit them up, check out their other work, websites, all that fun stuff. And I'll let Steve go first because you got to get out of here soon. So,
okay. Well, anyone who goes to Kickstarter, Kickstarter.com, and just in the search bar puts in Zen Bounty Wars, it'll come immediately up. They can check out the entire promotion and hopefully want to get something. So that's that. And Bill, what do you say?
Well, you know what? If you haven't heard of Zen before, and you see the different tiers, don't want to spend that much money, the PDF is only $5. I encourage everybody to at least try it out, and I really want everybody to read the story. I think everybody's going to have a really good time reading the story and hopefully becoming a fan of Zen. Other than that, you see on my name tag, it's bailmouse.com is my webpage. I've got an online store. If you want to download a free PDF of some of my older Nira X Cyber Angel 90s comics, I've got 4 issues up there that you could download, and there's another pinup book there. And I rotate original art in and out of the online store. But other than that, and Sunday nights at 10 o'clock on my YouTube channel at Bill Mouse Art, Steve and I actually sit down and we're working on the book live. So, we do that for about a half hour, just a little quick half-hour show. So come out and, hang out, ask us questions, just say hi, whatever. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're up to, man. Thanks, Andrew.
This is the grassroots nature of running a Kickstarter and an independent comic book. And Andrew, we want to thank you for giving this wonderful exposure at your awesome channel. Thank you, sir.
And then, I appreciate the compliment. And I'll just tell everybody who I am. I am Pop Anime Comics on Twitter /X, Pop Anime Comics on Instagram, Pop Anime Comics on Facebook, Pop Anime Comics on YouTube, Pop Anime Comics on TikTok, Pop Anime Comics Collectibles on eBay right here for those who want to look at it. My cute little elf. That URL is just for you guys. And I carry some interesting books and cool stuff like this, like books like this. I tend to buy out print runs and things of that nature. And I'm also on Whatnot, either on Fridays or Saturdays, selling some cool books. And my favorite items to sell are these. But I've been having a hard time seeing it, everybody. I've been having a hard time seeing this card. And I don't know if anybody else saw it, but I didn't see it yet. And when I send them out, you're like, I can't see the card. I'm like, neither can I. And we all are still trying to figure out what's going on with it. But that's everything that I got. So Pop Anime Comics is my stuff. And I don't know who wants the last word.
I should say the last word is thank everyone who has been supporting Zen for all these years. And if you're new to Zen and Nira, check us out on Kickstarter, and we really appreciate it.
Word.
And I couldn't say that any better myself, everybody. And that is a wrap.